A new report by Amnesty International has published more evidence of ethnic cleansing by Myanmar security forces against Rohingya Muslims. The organisation has documented thousands of new refugees who have fled Myanmar since last December. Let's get more on the report. We're joined by Matthew Wells from Washington, D.C. He's a senior advisor for Amnesty International. Matthew, many thanks for joining us here on TRT World. So bring us up to date on this report. You describe the use of starvation and denial of access to rice fields. What is different this time from what you've reported before?
I'm just back from 2 weeks on the Bangladesh-Myanmar border, and even now, as you say, we still see several hundred Rohingya crossing into Myanmar every week. And what they describe to me is a quieter but no less devastating type of persecution from the first months, where we saw these widespread killings, systematic burning of villages and sexual violence. Now the military seems to be taking a slightly different tack in which they are denying access to rice fields, denying access and at times burning Rohingya markets, denying aid access throughout northern Rakhine states. And the result of this is that many of the new arrivals told me that they fled because they were approaching starvation. They simply could not find food. And others told me that there had been abductions of women and young girls in some specific villages. And the combination has been to continue this ethnic cleansing campaign that we've seen since August of last year.
But what can be done about it? Because at the end of the day, the authorities in Myanmar continue to deny what's going on.
It's right, but there has so far been really insufficient pressure from the international community. We've seen lots of condemnations, lots of countries making statements about concern over these horrific human rights violations, but we need to start seeing real consequences for the Myanmar military and for the actions that it's carried out against the Rohingya population. In particular, we need to see an arms embargo. We need to see targeted financial sanctions against senior officials who are implicated in these atrocities, and we need to see real concerted pressure to make sure that the authorities open up access to humanitarian organizations in northern Rakhine State.
And where are we in terms of the repatriation of the hundreds of thousands of refugees that have fled to Bangladesh?
Right now, talk of repatriation is really premature, and we see that by the fact that human rights violations have not even stopped. People are continuing to cross into Bangladesh because of the continued persecution by the Myanmar military. And so what we first need to address is the impunity that allows the military to continue to operate in this way. We also need to see the whole system of persecution and discrimination that's really been built up over years and even decades against the Rohingya population dismantled, so that in the future, when it may be potentially more possible for returns that are safe and voluntary, that they can return to an environment in which they're not subjected to the type of persecution that they have been for years.
And briefly, Matthew, why is it, do you think, that the international community hasn't acted as strongly as you think it should?
I think obviously in recent years, Myanmar took steps from the long military dictatorship to a more democratic government, and so I think countries have wanted to give this government a chance, but at the same time, we are seeing hundreds of thousands of people who have been forced out under some of the most horrific human rights violations we've seen in recent history. And it's time to send a clear message that those violations will not be tolerated, and that there has to be accountability for the crimes that have been committed.
Matthew, many thanks for joining us here on TRT World. Matthew Wells, Senior Crisis Advisor for Amnesty International.